He was the endearing blunder of America. On live television, the man who made millions of dollars worth of blunders managed to make us chuckle. After that, Austin Chumlee Russell disappeared from Pawn Stars. No farewell episode, no explanation, simply a blank spot where the show's core was. Fans' preconceived notions about their favorite reality TV goofy were completely upended by what they learned next. A secret existence that made headlines for all the wrong reasons, police raids, and felony accusations. It's only half the story though. Perhaps even more startling than Chumlee's reason for leaving is what transpired after he vanished. There is more to this than a celebrity collapse. It's about whether you can rebuild when everyone believes they know who you truly are. And what happens when your darkest experience becomes your defining one. The reality of Chumlee's journey will permanently alter your perspective on redemption. However, we must first comprehend how a regular guy unintentionally became one of the biggest stars on reality TV, before delving into the pandemonium that ruined his career. Because Chumlee nearly lost his fame because of the same thing that made him famous. Austin Russell had no desire to appear on TV. In fact, he had no desire to work in a pawn shop. However, in 2003 he was just a normal guy who happened to be at his best friend's workplace, the Las Vegas pawn store owned by Corey Harrison's family. Chumlee was happy to sit in the back and watch elderly men quarrel over rusty antiques, while other 20-somethings went out to party. This is when things start to get interesting. Chumlee was thought by everyone to be dead weight, the friend who stayed because he had nowhere else to go. However, an odd thing began to occur. This ostensibly inexperienced man started identifying valuable products that experienced dealers failed to notice. A $1,000 old game system. Chumlee saw it at once. The 8's limited edition sneakers. He was aware of their precise worth. The Harrison began to listen. This was no accident. This was skill masquerading as sloth. The producers of Pawn Stars sought someone relatable for the show's 2009 premiere. Rick, the astute businessman, was with them. The elderly man with decades of experience. Corey is a symbol of the younger generation, but an everyman was what they needed. Someone in whom viewers may identify. The breakout star was not supposed to be Chumlee. His role was to provide humorous relief. The person who committed mistakes to make the actual experts appear more knowledgeable. Rather, a miraculous event occurred that no one could have foreseen. Instead of laughing at Chumlee, the audience laughed with him. People understood his impulse when he compensated for something because he found it cool. Everybody has purchased something they couldn't afford because it appealed to them. Viewers found themselves questioning the same thing when he posed questions that appeared to be straightforward. He was dubbed the Pawn Star Village idiot by critics. Chumlee likely felt hurt by that criticism, but instead of running away, he embraced it. He accepted the fact that he made sincere errors and didn't mind seeming silly. His genuineness was groundbreaking in a world of staged reality TV drama. The fan mail came flooding in. People explicitly asked about that humorous guy in their letters to the show. Ratings increased when Chumlee's hobbies, vintage video games, sports cards, and artifacts from popular culture, were highlighted in episodes. The History Channel became aware that they had unintentionally started a trend. The first smart step. Chumlee took advantage of this chance. He began selling everything from keychains to t-shirts under his own brand. The big power move, however, occurred in 2010 when he paid more than $150,000 to Rick Harrison for half of his name and image rights. Take a moment to consider that. A man who began as unpaid labor at his friend's family firm has now established himself as a multimillionaire. He remained the same person that made fans fall in love with him while transitioning from supporting role to co-star to businessman. However, Chumlee himself was unaware of this at the time. A double-edged sword is fame. The same genuineness that won him admiration would ultimately serve as the basis for his demise. Because when you live an open life, your failures are as visible to the world as your accomplishments. Chumlee was also on the verge of making some mistakes that might alter the course of history. He first had to endure a drastic metamorphosis that had people believing he was dying. If you watched Pawn Stars in the early 2010s, you most likely looked at your TV screen with astonishment. Chumlee was getting smaller, not slowly, abruptly, startlingly, or nearly all at once. Because of how abrupt the change was, conspiracy theories began to circulate. Was he ill? Taking harmful drugs? Had he undergone covert surgery? The conjecture ranged from worried to outright crazy. However, since this was more than just weight loss, everyone was discussing it. This was a whole physical change that seems unattainable. When the truth was eventually revealed, it was both devastating and motivating. It began with the worst possible wake-up call. Losing his father, who was only 54, to pancreatic cancer. Chumlee found himself looking at his own death all of a sudden. He was on the same path, weighing over 350 pounds and having a poor diet. It was not if his way of life would kill him, but when. However, sustainable change is not usually the result of personal wake-up calls. Seeing his best friend Corey Harrison drastically change his life and lose 200 pounds was what finally drove him over the edge. Chumlee needed the encouragement to see evidence that significant improvement was possible, especially from someone so close to him. He went Allen, whole diet change. Fast lunch runs in between shoots are over. No more junk food-fueled late-night gaming binges. He began to eat in moderation, something he had never understood as an adult. The first findings were amazing. Chumlee felt better than he had in years when the burden vanished. His makeover and determination astounded his fans. Here's something no one discusses though. Weight loss is frequently the simple part. The majority of people fail at keeping it off. And he failed. Even though he was successful at first, the weight began to return. Frustration, disappointment, and a crippling sense of failure were all brought on by the yo-yo effect. Why couldn't he maintain the weight loss he had demonstrated? Devastating emotional damage resulted. Every variation became a matter of public debate. When he appeared in episodes, fans would comment, sometimes in a positive way, and other times not. It felt impossible to stop the loop of pressure, to keep up his progress, while juggling the stresses of everyday life. Chumlee made the choice that would save his life at that moment: surgery for gastric bypass. In essence, the technique shrinks the stomach, which restricts food consumption and aids in appetite regulation. He didn't make that decision hastily. Surgical weight loss is still stigmatized, and there are always hazards involved. Chumlee, however, saw this as having nothing to do with conceit or even public perception. It was a matter of survival. The procedure went just as planned. He managed to lose and maintain more than 160 pounds. More significantly, he developed a new perspective on eating and learned to put long-term health ahead of short-term satisfaction. In hindsight, this time of metamorphosis was preparing him for difficulties no one could have predicted. What followed would put every ounce of the discipline, self-awareness, and mental fortitude he had acquired on his weight loss journey to the test, making them essential survival skills, and it would take place in the most embarrassing and public manner imaginable. March 9, 2016. It was just another Wednesday for most folks. It was the day that everything in Austin Chumlee Russell's world fell apart. It wasn't admirers requesting autographs that knocked on his door in Las Vegas. With a search warrant in hand, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department was prepared to demolish everything he had worked so hard to build over the previous 7 years. It wasn't a random raid. Chumlee's name had come up in relation to the sexual assault case that police were looking into. Their search yielded significantly more information than was relevant to the first investigation. They were discovering a secret life that would destroy the reputation of America's favorite reality TV, Goofy. But it was like unlocking Pandora's box, only instead of unleashing evil onto the world. There were 12 guns strewn all over the house, some of which were military-era weapons, and some of which were unregistered, raising severe concerns about how he got them and why he needed such an arsenal. Subsequently, he found cocaine residue in his intimate areas, unlabeled prescription tablets, methamphetamine, and marijuana. This was not proof of sporadic bad decisions. This was evidence of a serious drug problem that had been kept well out of the public eye. The disparity was unbelievably stark. Here was a person who had been a harmless, clumsy figure on TV, for years making viewers laugh with his careless errors. It felt like huge cognitive dissonance to think that the same individual was supposedly involved in major criminal conduct. The story quickly spread throughout all of the nation's entertainment news outlets. The collapse of a reality TV star was the subject of headlines. Fans felt totally misled, and their amazement, disappointment, and rage erupted on social media. The same media that had praised his accomplishments in business and weight loss were now scrutinizing every aspect of his alleged transgressions. 20 felonies, illegal gun possession, drug possession, and actions that jeopardized public safety. Chumlee faced a potential penalty of 70 years in jail, if found guilty on all counts. That was practically a life sentence for a man of 33. Devastating and unrelenting was the media attention. This new perspective forced him to reevaluate every part of his life. In order to find clues that everyone had overlooked, previous interviews were replayed. They questioned his journey of transformation. Had drug use resulted from the stress of losing weight? His commercial transactions were closely examined. His connections were examined. Seeing his well-crafted brand fall apart in real time, however, was possibly the most cruel aspect. Sales of merchandise ceased. Bookings for appearances were canceled. Without announcing it publicly, the Pawn Stars producers discreetly took him off all promotional materials. Chumlee was freed after posting $62,000 bond, but the harm had already been done. The public opinion court had already handed down its decision, and it was not in favor. 2 months later, his legal team took a calculated move that cost him his profession but most likely saved his life. Instead of facing decades in prison, Chumlee accepted a plea bargain. He entered a guilty plea to one felony charge of illegal firearm possession and one lesser charge of attempting to possess a prohibited drug. The punishment included giving up all evidence, 3 years of rigorous probation, and required counseling. Not jail time, but also no more TV career, at least not for the time being. Chumlee practically disappeared from the public eye when the verdict was rendered public. No declarations, no justifications, no efforts to repair his reputation. Millions of fans were left wondering what had happened to their favorite reality TV figure after he abruptly vanished. At the time, no one realized that this departure had nothing to do with shame. The goal was to completely rebuild in the most genuine manner imaginable. Chumlee remained almost unknown to the public for 3 years. Probation, therapy, and silence for 3 years, while the entertainment industry moved on without him. When faced with a scandal of this nature, the majority of celebrities would have published a book detailing their hardships, hired a public relations firm, or given emotional interviews. None of that was done by Chumlee. Rather, he did something vastly more real and far more challenging. In fact, during his probationary time, he changed. Even while the tabloids printed articles about ease, Chumlee was quietly putting his life back together piece by piece. The hard job of improving oneself, no cameras, no advertising campaigns. At the height of his legal issues in 2017, he made a decision that caught everyone off guard. In Las Vegas, he opened Chumlee's Candy on the Boulevard. It was a straightforward candy store, not a fancy restaurant or nightclub, where adults could revel in their childhood nostalgia and children could purchase penny candies. The store wasn't a publicity gimmick or a way to make money. It served as therapy, a tangible location where he could engage with others who had positive memories of him, sell goods that made him happy, and demonstrate to himself that he was capable of operating a respectable business. In its simplicity, his social media campaign around this time was brilliant. He presented genuine stuff regarding his own interests, rather than making justifications or apologies. A middle-aged man who was actually enjoying the small things in life, like playing with his dog, displaying vintage treasures. They were recorded on his phone, occasionally wobbly but always real. They were able to show the truth. Image rehabilitation was not what this was. Chumlee was just being himself here. The reaction was slow but sincere. His posts received a range of comments, from disappointment and rage to interest and eventually support. People started to see the person below the headlines. This person had committed grave errors and was acting consistently and authentically to atone for them in the most visible way imaginable. During this time, he continued to change physically. His long-term results from the gastric bypass surgery he had before his legal issues were positive. He managed to lose and maintain more than 160 pounds. More significantly, though, he had developed a whole new perspective on food and health. There was no hoopla, no special episode explaining Chumlee's absence, and no spectacular comeback interview when he eventually made his way back to Pawn Stars. As if he had never left, he just showed up in episodes, sharing his knowledge of collectibles, and cracking the same self-deprecating comments that had made him famous. It was a brilliant move on the part of the producers to bring him back without making a huge issue out of it. It made it possible for viewers to evaluate him on his current actions, rather than his prior transgressions. And they observed a man who had obviously matured as a result of his experiences. He currently has an estimated net worth of $5 million. It is big for someone who nearly lost everything, but not Hollywood rich. More significantly, it's money made through respectable ventures and television work, rather than get-rich-quick schemes, or taking advantage of his fame. The candy store outlasted numerous celebrity vanity projects, continuing to operate until 2025. He continues to be modest yet consistent on social media. He continues to work on Pawn Stars into its 20th honest season. His return is replete with references to sustainability rather than glitz. However, his response to the ongoing death rumors that still surround him may be the clearest indication of his true metamorphosis. He just keeps living his life openly and honestly, without becoming upset or using spokespeople to make denials. The rumors automatically end when people watch videos of him on the show or unpacking collectibles. His entire comeback strategy is based on this tactic, which allows action to speak louder than words. And since it's genuine, it's working. What sets Chumlee's story apart from all the other celebrity comebacks and scandals you've heard is as follows. A public relations team did not create it. Chumlee adopted a drastically different strategy at a time when rehabilitation tours are organized months in advance, and public apologies are meticulously crafted. He vanished, completed the task, and returned only when he was truly prepared. No heartfelt interviews, no reality program about his hardships, and no book deal that takes advantage of his darkest hours. There is more to this lesson than second chances. It concerns the distinction between real growth and image restoration. Managing perception is the main goal of most star comebacks. The goal of Chumlee's comeback was to truly transform himself. A peculiar trap is created by popularity, particularly reality TV fame. You become well known for being who you are, which is fantastic until you realize that millions of people are now amused by your worst qualities. Although Chumlee's endearing silliness was sincere, it also concealed more serious problems that he was able to sidestep because of his wealth and celebrity. The weapons, the drugs, the careless actions. These poor choices weren't made at random. They were the product of someone who had never learned how to deal with the demands of fame, success, or the loneliness that accompanies it. It's simple to lose sight of reality when you have everything you need and are treated more like a fictional character than a real person. Therapy and rehabilitation programs were helpful, but they weren't what saved Chumlee. Having sincere relationships was what kept him alive after his demise. The best buddy, Corey Harrison, never deserted him. When he was ready, the Harrisons welcomed him back. Because it was based on genuine friendship rather than business networking, his support network held up. His bodily metamorphosis was also very important. Maintaining noticeable weight loss took discipline, which he applied to other aspects of his life. You know you can change other things after you've shown yourself that you can alter something as basic as your connection with eating. When reform seems sincere, the public's ability to forgive is astounding. Individuals are not stupid. They are able to distinguish between deliberate image management and real growth. People were able to perceive that Chumlee's adjustments were genuine, which led to his slow return to public favor. Chumlee now stands for something uncommon in celebrity culture, evidence that it is possible to be redeemed without being exploited. He didn't make money off of his errors or create material from his darkest hours. He just worked to improve himself and let that do the talking. His tale strikes a chord because it is really human. Everybody has made embarrassing blunders. Everybody has battled with bad habits or actions they knew were harmful. All of us have questioned whether we can actually change or if our worst tendencies will always recur. Chumlee's response is unambiguous. Change is achievable, but only if you're prepared to put your own needs ahead of those of the general public. The reason his comeback was successful was because it wasn't truly a comeback. It was merely an individual maturing in public and accepting accountability for his decisions. As Pawn Stars enters its third decade, Chumlee continues to be a popular character. People have witnessed him grow from his mistakes, not because they forgot about them. His story offers something different in a society that is fixated on cancel culture and irreversible repercussions. The potential for true salvation via constant, sincere behavior. Chumlee's reality isn't that he's a flawless individual who made some poor decisions. It's that, despite his imperfections, he made the decision to improve himself and worked hard to achieve it. Ultimately, that may be the most relatable aspect of